Hi everybody, and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. I'm really excited that you're here. If you're returning, thank you so much for your ongoing support. Today I have 18 DIYs for you, all with regards to love and Valentine's Day. Some are items that you can use all year round, and some are specifically for the Valentine's Day holiday. But at any rate, I hope that you enjoy all the projects. Leave me a comment to let me know your thoughts, and please give me a big thumbs up because it really does help support my channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get crafting. Here we go with DIY number 1. For this project, I am going to be using a funnel from the automotive section of the Dollar Tree, as well as some men's tube socks, also from the Dollar Tree. I'm using some of these glass beads that you can also get from the Dollar Tree, as well as a Dollar Tree mop head. And then I'm also going to be using a little bit of fiber fill from my stash. So the first thing I'm going to do is take one of the socks and I'm just going to slide it right down over the funnel. You saw I didn't even take the label off the funnel. I pulled it down over, thought about rolling it back, and then decided against it. And then with the second sock, I am going to fill the bottom of it with some of these glass beads. If I were to be purchasing bags of the glass stones or beads, whatever you want to call them, from the Dollar Tree, I think one bag would probably be sufficient. Maybe 1.5, just to give you an idea. But it's really just to make sure that this is going to be able to stand up on its own and be anchored. And then you saw I didn't cut the sock, I just rolled the sock into itself until it was about the height that I wanted it. So now I'm coming in on the mop head and using my wire cutters to cut those little 2 plastic elements on either side, and you saw that that just kind of broke away after I cut them, and I was able to get all of those threads out. Taking some of my fiber fill and stuffing this sock. This is going to be our body, so I want it to be nice and plump, and so just getting it to the plumpness, if you will, that I want it at, so that I make sure that it'll also be able to stand up on its own. Then I'm taking a number of the yarn pieces from the mop head, and I'm just lining them up because this is going to make for our gnome's little beard, and I just wanted everything to be even because I didn't want to have to trim anything off. So I folded them all in half, and I'm tucking them into the top of the sock and arranging them, and once I have them the way I want them, I'm taking our funnel covered with the sock and placing it on our gnome's little head. Then I'll come in with some hot glue, and I'm going to start at the back and just make sure I've got that all secured, and then I'll come in around the front and do the same. So coming in around the front, do the same thing there, and just make sure that it's all nice and secure the way that I want it. I'm being pretty generous with the hot glue there. And then I also decided to form his little hat a little bit more so it's pointy at the end. Again, I didn't even bother cutting it. I just formed it the way I wanted it, used a little hot glue, got it to be a little bit pointy towards the end, and I was all good there. So now I'm coming in and I am unraveling the yarns. Now you could totally leave them as is. I just felt like it looked like dreadlocks. So nothing wrong with dreadlocks, but I wanted it to be a little bit more full and fluffy with more strands. So that was the way that I decided to go. So I'm unraveling all of those yarn strands. And then I pulled out my ARTEZA felt, and this is self-adhesive felt, and I'm just searching for the colors that I want. I picked out a brown that I thought would match the socks, and then I also pulled out a peach color that would be like a skin tone. Now I set that aside for a second and pulled out a little styrofoam ball. This is what I'm going to use for his nose, and I stuck it on the end of a pick that I had left over from some florals, and I am just going to go ahead and give that a coat of plaster chalk paint. And then I'm also coming in with, I think this one is called Victorian. It's like a light pink. And I just want to make his little nose a little bit more pink. Excuse me. So while that's drying, I pulled out these hearts that I got from the Dollar Tree as well. if you saw my haul the other day, you're recognizing a lot of these supplies, but using a wooden heart and then this red felt heart, and I am going to go ahead and secure the felt onto the wood. I just wanted it to have a little bit more structure, which is why I'm layering it like this. And then I was also trying to figure out how to cover up that hole. Just go easy with the hot glue. I used a little bit too much there, and I was noticing it was kind of peeking through the felt. I didn't think that the felt would have it go through it. I thought it was thick enough, but just word to the wise. You ended up not being able to see it once it was dried, but I don't know, it was bothering me at the time. But then I decided I was going to go ahead and thread through some of this pink ribbon that I had picked up on sale at Michael's. If you decide that you want to do this, I do recommend weaving that through the heart, the felt heart, before you attach it to the wood piece. Obviously, I was able to do it, but it would have been a lot easier if I had done it in a different order. So now I'm just tying my little bow, and I'm just making sure that it's going to be positioned in a place that covers up that hole that I was talking about earlier. Just a plain old little shoelace bow. So now I am going to create my little hands with the peach toned felt. So I'm drawing out a little mitten hand, and I will actually create 4 of these. So 2 for each hand, 1 for the front of the hand, 1 for the back of the hand. So you can see there I've got my 4 pieces, front and back for each side. I'm just making sure that they line up. And I'm going to sandwich his little hands around the heart. This is how he's going to be holding the heart. So peeled off the little paper. I did not get it at the right angle when I first put it on here, but you know, happy accident. I ended up just deciding that I would have him hold the heart at an angle. So I actually think I like it better than having him hold the heart straight on. So I kind of lined it up with his little chest to see where I wanted to place the other hand, and then now you can see me putting that down as well. And again, just sandwiching it between the little felt pieces, because again, these are sticky, and so they're adhering to each other, and it just allows him to be holding the little heart. So now I'm going to come in and do the same idea with making some arms for him with the chocolate brown felt. And you're seeing me cut off the end of the back side, or yes, at the end of the back side of the arm. So I'm showing you here. So once I had all the pieces exact, I did cut off a chunk on either side, because I want to leave the front part of that adhesive exposed so that I have a way to adhere it to his body. So hopefully that makes sense. So you can see the front is going to be longer than the back. So now I'm applying the back side of his arm first, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply the front side of his arm, which again will be longer than the back. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that non-stick wrap that was on the back of it to just protect that while I work on the other one. Did the same thing there. And now I'm going to wrap it around his little body, making sure that those yarn pieces are out of the way, and just sticking the felt to his little sock body. So you can see there how I did that. So now, once the little nose is dry, I am parting the ways with his beard, and I'm going to stick that right down inside of there. Actually, is it hair or a beard? Maybe it's both. I don't know. It's coming down from his head, so I guess maybe it is hair. but it's serving the purpose for both, I guess. And came in with some hot glue and just made sure that that was nice and secure. Just fluffing him up, and there he is. DIY number 2. For this project, I'm using a sign from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to take off the little hanger and set that aside for a future project. And then I'm going to bring in my Waverly chalk paint and elephant, and just giving this one good coat of paint, making sure that I get all of my edges and so everything is nice and covered. Once it was dry, I came in with my pencil and my ARTEZA Architect's ruler, and I'm just drawing the lines that would depict the shiplap. And that's really just to give me a line to go by for my ARTEZA chalk paint markers. So I am just kind of drawing that in, and then I'm going to come in with a baby wipe and kind of smear it along there just to make it a little bit more muted so that I have that line, but it's not like in your face. So I wanted it to be subtle. Now I'm coming in with my Adirondack white chalk paint. This is by Home Decor, and this is available in my Amazon store, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a bit. You're going to want to stick around and hear what I have to say about that. But I am coming in and I am drawing my letters, and this is hand lettering. This is not my handwriting, you guys. I do not have great handwriting, but I am taking my time. Keep in mind this is sped up about 3 times, and so I am just taking my time. I am drawing each of the letters just like I would draw a picture, so really going slowly and trying to get it the way that I want it. And you know, it's funny, I was so focused on the placement of everything and trying to make it nice and neat and keeping in mind that I want to put some circles around here that I completely misspelled the word always. Here I go. 2 L's. Really, Corie? What was I thinking? And what's worse is that I didn't even realize it until it was too late for me to fix it, because I was needing to start editing this video. And I wasn't actually even the person that noticed it. I had shared the picture with one of my sweet YouTube friends, and she was like, I don't know if you did it on purpose, but, and I was like, oh no, how did I misspell always? So yeah, as I've said before, if you think I've got it all together, yeah, no. So I had to just kind of go with it. I was joking about maybe putting a hyphen in there, and you know, you will forever be my always, you know, but so do as I say, not as I do. Don't put 2 L's in the word always. But so hopefully you all will forgive my misspelling. I knew it looked funny, but it just didn't register. So at any rate, now I am coming back and I am creating faux calligraphy. So if you've watched my videos before, you know that I'm just going to be making every downstroke thicker. So I do go back over all of the letters just to make them darker so that they stand out on the sign. But as far as making them thicker, that's only on the downstrokes. So you can see how it's turning out here. That extra L is killing me still, you guys. I hate it when I do stuff like that. But anyway, perfect I am not, by far. So once I had my words all done, I'm coming in with some little wreaths, if you will. So really just freehanding some circles, and I'm going to come in and draw little leaves on here, and you can draw as many or as few as you'd like. You don't have to do leaves, you could do flowers, you don't even have to do these circles around it if you don't want to. Make it yours, be as creative as you would like. But I thought that this was super cute, and I was really happy with it, aside from that extra L. So then I flipped over my sign and I just came in with some craft paper, and I'm going to use my hot glue and secure all of the craft paper to the back of my sign just to make it a nice finished product, if you will. And I've got my ARTEZA self-healing mat under there, so I'm going to flip it over, and just using my craft knife, I'm going to trim off that paper right along the edge of the entire sign. So it'll be nice and neat, and we've got a clean edge, and we don't have to worry about that glitter on the back. So now I'm using my little pokey tool, and I am poking through those little holes that were already in the sign. I had not sealed those up because I knew I wanted to use them. And I'm using some of my lace ribbon from burlapfabric.com. And I do have a code for you in my description box for $5 off a purchase of $5 or more. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. But I am feeding the ribbon through both sides from back to front, and then my thought was I was just gonna tie a cute little bow on the front here, and that was going to be my hanger, you know, nice little bow on the front, really cute, right? I just couldn't stand the way that the bow was not working, I should say. So I messed with this for a while. I went ahead and actually even trimmed off the little tails, thinking that I was going to be able to get it to position itself the way that I was envisioning, and it just wasn't having it. So finally I just was like, you know what, yeah, I even tried to turn it upside down to see if I could manipulate it that way, and yeah, no. So plan B, I decided I was going to pull the ribbon through enough so that I had my little hanger, and then just long enough to tie it off in the front. And in hindsight, I didn't need to tie it. I could have just hot glued it down, but at the time I was thinking I needed to, or I wanted to, tie my little bow to the ribbon there in the center, and I wasn't going to be able to do that if it was secured to the board. Hopefully you're understanding what I'm saying. Totally unnecessary. I could have just hot glued it and then just hot glued my bow right on top of it. It would have been fine. So I went ahead and did what I call a crisscross bow. So basically just crisscrossed the ribbon over itself, and I'm taking another piece of ribbon, tying it off, flipping that under itself so that the knot is underneath and hidden, so you have a nice little pretty finished top part. It keeps flipping around on me there, but I managed eventually. And then I cut off my other little tails. So for this ribbon, I actually have 4 tails. So I like this type of ribbon also because I think it's just super cute. So you've got your 4 little tails and your little loops, and there you go. And I did go ahead and secure it with some hot glue. So I have some exciting news. My website is finally up and running, and I am so happy. So many thanks to Studio Mommy, who helped me get this all together. I even have a place where you can subscribe so you can get all of the latest updates, including, so I've got a blog, but then I have a calendar out here. So I know a lot of people ask me when my Cocktails with Corie is, when my Coffee with Corie is. You'll be able to find it all out there on my website. It's www.craftedbycorie.com, and I will be having my free printables out here as well when I get my act together. Also excited to tell you that my Amazon store is now available. So if you have any interest, you can go ahead and click through the link in my description box and shop to your heart's content. DIY number 3. For this project, I have yet again a Dollar Tree piece. You Are My Person. Now, this one, I started sanding off all of the glitter because I had it in my head that I wanted my design to be on that side, just the way that the heart was laying. And then I was like, well, I also could make this 2-sided. Ultimately, I only made it single-sided, but yeah. So I'm sanding and sanding and sanding. And eventually I discovered that this actually isn't even painted on. It's a piece of paper that is like glued onto the surface of the MDF or wood or whatever it is. So I start peeling the paper off, and then I was like going at it with a baby wipe, trying to, it was a big mess. So anyway, I finally got it to where I needed it. And now I'm taking my home decor chalk paint. I think it's called Vintage Victorian. It's just a nice little pink. And now I have my ARTEZA chalk paint markers. It's a set of 42 here. You can see they sent me extra tips. Well, not me, it comes in the package, but I am so excited for these, you guys. So I picked out magenta, and I'm going to be using these. And then, oh yeah, I discovered that they had all these cute little labels in there. So the whole set of chalk paint markers, but then all these cute little black labels that you can use for all different things. They're different shapes and sizes. There are a whole bunch of them in there, and then also some stencils. So I just thought that that was so cute and really great. So I'm looking forward to using these some more. But for now, I'm just getting my ink started. So when you start one of the ARTEZA paint markers, you just have to get the paint going into the tip. That's just how it is. And now you can see me flipping the tip around because I want to use the fine point. Here's another thing, do as I say, not as I do. When you go to put your lid back on, make sure you flip your point back in, because the lids are set to fit on the blunt side of the tip, not on the pointy side of the tip. The pointy side sticks out too far and you'll damage your tip. Probably why they send you extra tips, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who forgets and tries to put the lid back on while the little pointy tip is out. But anyway, I was using my ARTEZA Architect's ruler to just give myself a guide. I wasn't going all the way down to that line, if you will, but I wanted to be able to visualize what a straight line looked like when I was doing this. I'm just creating a giant version of the little conversation hearts that they have out at Valentine's Day. I just thought this would be really cute, and you totally could do a different saying on the back, especially if you're going to be putting this on a tiered tray. So, you know, it's got two different sayings on the little sign. So once I had my words written out, I came back in and I just thickened up all of those lines so they were nice and bold. And then I decided I was going to fancy it up a little bit. So this is my ARTEZA glitter in raspberry, it was called, and I've got a little bit of gloss Mod Podge that I'm pouring into my little container here and adding some glitter. I was wishing I had thought of this when I do another project later on that was actually recorded first. I was like, why didn't I think of this before? Because I made kind of a mess with the other project. But I'm just essentially making my own glitter glue here, right? And it is glitter glue that is a custom shade because I got to decide what it was going to look like. So with a very fine brush, I am just coming in and tracing over all of my letters. And the raspberry glitter that I had chosen was almost essentially the same color as the magenta chalk paint that I had put on here. And I hadn't originally planned to do this, but when I was looking at it, I was like, it needs a little bit more oomph. So that was why I went ahead and did that. And now I'm just coming around and giving it a little bit more detail, just to make it fun and pretty. And there you have it. Leave me a comment and let me know what you think of these projects so far. DIY number 4. For this project, I am going to be using my Moss Waverly chalk paint, as well as the craft sticks. These are like tongue depressor sticks. The heart that I picked up at the Dollar Tree, this one's all glittery, but we're going to be painting it over. I also have 4 frames, also from the Dollar Tree, all the same. They have to be identical. And then a bunch of greenery that I have from Walmart. So I'm just taking off the little extra heart from the middle there, as well as the hanger, and I'm going to go ahead and paint this. Now, if you watch my channel a lot, you know I normally just paint right out of the bottle. In this instance, I am not, because this is covered with glitter, and I didn't want to risk having glitter end up on my paintbrush and then me sticking my paintbrush into the bottle. So that is why I did that. But I coated it both sides, set it aside to dry, and now I am working on my frames. So I started pulling these all off and then realized that I wasn't going to need to use the back of these frames at all, so you can just leave them on and just take the whole back off. So went ahead and set everything else aside. Then I also took my glass out. I am going to be using the glass, so I just set that aside for a little bit later. Got all my frames together, and then I started using my STARBOND. This is the medium STARBOND CA glue or super glue. And you know what? I was struggling with the medium for whatever reason. I don't know if it's the type of material that the frame is made out of, but you can see I'd flipped it over. I tried, you know, securing it with my little vice clips, and it just wasn't working. So I came in with some hot glue and just kind of smoothed that out in between the crevices. I want to be able to come in afterwards with some of the craft sticks to make it a little bit more secure, so I didn't want the hot glue sticking up too much. So that's what my thought process was there. So now I'm like, well, how do I deal with this gap? Thought about hot glue. I didn't do it. I came in with my thick STARBOND glue, which is also a wood filler. Now, these frames are not wood. They're like a heavy foam, I would say. So the STARBOND actually did serve its purpose here. And it filled in that gap for the most part, but not entirely. So I'll show you in a minute what I do. And I couldn't tell that it wasn't completely filled in until after I came in with the paint. So I'm just doing a heavy dry brush with my plaster by Waverly. This is chalk paint. And now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I can see all these gaps. I don't like it. So what did I do ultimately? Yeah, I came in with the hot glue and I just ran a bead all the way down along each of these gaps. And then I just went back over it with the plaster to cover that up. And it actually worked out quite well. And this little thing is pretty darn secure now. So then I flipped it back over. I placed all of my glass pieces in, and then I came in with my hot glue to secure them in so that they would be a little bit more permanent and fixed in, because again, I'm not putting the backs back on these. So I needed to make sure that the glass was going to be secure. And I just did hot glue on 2 of the edges. So now there was a little bit of a gap between the glass and where I would want to put these craft sticks to make sure that everything is secure. So, and I don't want to be able to see the sticks through the glass. So I ended up cutting them down the middle, and then I slid the half craft sticks in underneath the little lips that are there to secure the backs of the frames. I hope this is making sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but hopefully you're getting it based on what I'm doing here. And then I just ran a whole bunch of hot glue along that, and then I added another popsicle stick. So like those little lips that hold the backings of the frames were sandwiched between the 2 layers of the craft sticks. And then I added them around the perimeter also, just to help secure the frame in place, or the glass, excuse me. So now, once I have that together, I set that aside for right now, and I'm coming back to my heart now that it's dry, and I'm pulling apart all my picks. You guys know me, I'm always pulling apart the picks. I did try to see if maybe I could keep them intact, and it just wasn't gonna happen. They were just too large for this little heart and what I wanted to do. So I came in, and one by one, I attached these little pieces of the greenery picks to the heart, and I just kept layering it. I tried to go from the inner edge at first and then from the outer edge, just to make sure that everything was covered. And then I kind of kept alternating back and forth from the outer edge to the inner edge, from the inner edge back out to the outer edge, and just went around the entire perimeter of the wreath form. Well, what I'm calling a wreath form. So once that was all done, I have my little greenery heart here. And I came back in with some ribbon. This is like a light gauzy kind of ribbon. And I thought I wanted to hang it from the inside of the wreath. And I thought, well, if I can put it on either side of the little point, it'll help to define my heart shape a little bit better. But as I was working with it, I'm looking at it and I'm trying to get it to work, and I just wasn't happy with the way that it was looking. So ultimately I decided that I wasn't going to do it that way. I just didn't care for it at all. Here I am still playing with it. How long am I going to play with it before I give it up? So yeah. So I finally decided it wasn't working for me. So instead I flipped it over. I took the same ribbon and I folded over the ends, and I'm just going to attach it to the back of my little wreath, for lack of a better term. So once that was all glued down and secured, I went ahead and flipped it back over. Of course, I wanted more glue. Flipped it back over, and then I centered it on my window frame, and then I'm going to attach it to the back of the frame. So I just ran a nice bead of hot glue down that craft stick, I probably did it like 3 or 4 inches just because I wanted to make sure that that was nice and secure and not going anywhere. And then I trimmed that off, tucked my ribbon under, and I went ahead and glued that down some more. So now I decided it needed a little something more, and so I'm just making a little loop bow with some scraps of the ribbon that I had. So basically you just create a loop and then you tie another piece of ribbon around the center to make your tails. That's really all that you do. And then I used those tails to also attach it to the ribbon at the top. Once that was done, I went ahead and I dovetailed my ends just to finish it off. Hi again, I hope that you're enjoying the crafts so far. I'm really excited that you are here. If you are returning, thank you so much for all of your support. You know how much you all mean to me and I appreciate you. If you are new, I'm Corie, and on my channel I love doing all kinds of different DIYs and crafts, usually on a budget, a lot of Dollar Tree, thrift flips, trash to treasure. You'll see a little bit of everything here, and generally I slant towards Farmhouse with a little bit of traditional thrown in. I've recently been really inspired by New England, kind of coastal, but still with the slant towards Farmhouse. So at any rate, if you haven't already subscribed, I hope that you'll consider hitting that subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get back into the crafting. DIY number 5. So for this project, I have some items from the Dollar Tree, this home wood cutout, the fabric from the Crafter Square, and the little felt hearts. And with the fabric, I'm just cutting out a piece that will cover my home sign. And I thought I wanted to try to wrap this around the sign, and so I was kind of trimming off some of the extra and trying to cut slits to help me wrap it around. And I slowly realized that that just was not going to be feasible. So I was trying to come up with a different option and decided to come in with my Mod Podge. And so I gave the whole thing a nice coat of Mod Podge just on that front surface. And then I flipped my sign over onto the fabric, tried to make sure that it was lined up. Fortunately, I could see all of the checks through the back, smoothed that all out, and then started cutting away the excess fabric. Now, you could totally do this with scrapbook paper or something like that, and it would probably be a lot easier. But I have this utility knife that I had gotten. I think it's actually for scrapbooking. I was having a hardest time trying to figure out how to put the blade in it, but essentially you unscrew that little bit. The little ball at the top actually does separate. It opens, and you slide your little blade into that. And then when you screw it all back together again, it tightens up the little ball, and so your blade is secure. Just took me a little bit. So I'm using my little utility knife to cut away the fabric all around the edges of my home sign. And like I said, it would definitely be easier to do this with scrapbook paper, but I was amazed at actually how well this knife did cut through the fabric. And so just had to try and get around all those little edges, and I did cut it out from the E and the heart you saw. And then on the other side, once I was done, I kind of went back and tried to clean up my edges a little bit, make sure that everything was trimmed away. So now I decided I wanted it to not be quite so perfect on the edges. So I grabbed my sanding block from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just coming in and I am sanding the edges of the entire sign, and that's just kind of fraying the fabric all the way around. And then for those little areas where I couldn't get in there with the sanding block, you can see I'm just using regular sandpaper, Got my Dirt Devil. Do those things even get sold anymore? I swear. I inherited that from my mom, and she had it when I was growing up, so that little thing is old. But anyway, I'm now coming in with one of my felt hearts from the Dollar Tree. I think it comes in a pack of 6, I want to say 6 or 8, I can't remember, but nice little pack. And then I'm going to come in after I hot glued it down and use my little utility knife again to cut out the inside of that heart. You could totally leave it, I just wanted to cut it out. And I found that it might have been easier once I got it started to perhaps work on it from the front side and trim it around the wood. I made it work, and I just went back and kind of got in as close as I could to the wood to fix all of my little lines and everything. But I think if I had to do it over again, I might start it on the back side so I would know where to start, and then I might just try to carve it out from the front. And then I just came in with my little scissors to trim it up a little teeny bit more, and there you go. DIY number 6. For this project, I am using a puzzle from the Dollar Tree. I'm also using my Adirondack white chalk paint by Home Decor. I thought I was going to be using my Orient, or no, not Orient, Imperial. I don't know why I always want to call it Orient, but Imperial red chalk paint, but I ended up not using that. I also thought I was going to spray paint all of these white, and I did try taking them outside to spray paint them, but the weather was kind of rotten. It was super windy, so ultimately I ended up deciding it wasn't really working, and I brought them back in, and I figured I would paint them once I had them put together. So I'm just using up all of the the puzzle pieces, placing them in a heart shape. Just wanted to make sure it was going to work. And now I am creating just a simple outline of the hearts. And I'm going to come back in and fill in the gaps with my hot glue with the other pieces. So you can see at the top, I had already started gluing things. And when I first started trying to glue it all together, I was finding that I needed to have a more stable base on it. So that was why I ended up kind of taking everything apart and going back and doing it the way that I did. So now I've flipped it over. I just want to make it a little bit more stable and secure. So I am just using these large craft sticks. These are not the tongue depressor sticks. They are the medium-sized ones. So larger than popsicle sticks, but smaller than the tongue depressors. And I am just creating little support pieces so that everything is secure. And then I'm coming back in with my chalk paint. This is the Adirondack White by Home Decor. And I am giving it 2 coats of the white paint, and I painted both the front side as well as the back side. So now I've got my new ARTEZA self-healing cutting mat. I am so excited about this because it's a 24-inch mat, and I was thrilled that they agreed to send this to me because my larger mat is just, it gets to be too cumbersome sometimes. And I do have a new ARTEZA discount code in the description box if that's of interest to you. So I'm taking a piece of scrap foam core that I had, and I'm cutting it down using my ARTEZA cutting mat, my Dollar Tree little craft knife, and then also my ARTEZA I think it's called an architect's ruler, but I like it because it's like a tri-sided, so it's got like a thing up on top that I can kind of grasp onto. I'm just cutting that down. I cut the board down to be about 9 inches long by 4 inches tall. So just making sure that it's the right dimensions, it's all even. And then I came in again with my Adirondack white chalk paint, and I'm giving it just a single coat of paint on both sides, and also making sure that I get the edges. So here I was showing you, this was on clearance for $2.99 at Michael's. I actually used one of these ribbons a little bit earlier, but But yeah, it's super cute ribbon package for not a whole lot, so I was excited to find that. But I picked out this little gingham ribbon or buffalo check ribbon to use on this sign, and I'm just wrapping a piece around either end, and I'm going to secure that in the back with some hot glue. I had just folded over the edge to make it nice and neat. And coming in with my ARTEZA acrylic paint marker. I love these, you guys. And I'm not sure what color this is actually called. I should have looked it up before I started doing my my editing here, but it's really a pretty fuchsia color, for lack of knowing the actual name. But love these paint markers. So I came in and just took my time. Remember that this is sped up about 3 times, so I really am taking my time with this. I am, you know, drawing the letters, not handwriting the letters. But I don't know, I thought I was being clever and saying I love you to pieces. Get it? I hope you're enjoying today's projects. If you are, please do give me a thumbs up. It really does help support my channel. And if you haven't already subscribed, I hope that you will and that you'll continue to join me here. I really enjoy connecting with all of you, and I love all of the comments you leave for me, and I do try my very best to respond to every single one of you. So I hope that you'll leave me a comment too and let me know what your favorite project is from today's video. So now I am going to take my little sign and adhere it to the, would you call this a wreath? My little puzzle wreath. And then I'm taking another length of ribbon and I'm going to weave that through some of the gaps in the puzzle pieces to create my little hanger tie. And I don't know if you noticed before, I had forgotten to mention when I was using my paint marker, the tips are reversible. So it's got a wide end and then also a pointed tip end. You just want to make sure that once you use the pointed tip that you flip it back the other way, because you will smush your little pointed tip when you put your lid on if you don't. But they give you extra tips too. DIY number 7. So for this project, I am using yet another Dollar Tree piece. This is a red tinsel heart piece, and I showed you a couple of different types of ribbon that I'm going to be using. I also ended up using a third ribbon. So the first thing I'm doing is identifying where the end of this tinsel is, and I am just going to take it completely off of my heart, just unraveling it, and I will go ahead and save that for another project in the future. And then I'm coming in and cutting off all of these little nubs that are surrounding the frame. That was what they used to help secure all of that tinsel on there, and we won't need that for this project. So now I am coming in, I'm starting with my red ribbon, and this is wired ribbon. You could probably do this project with plain ribbon, but I found the wired ribbon to be super helpful because it allowed you to kind of bend it around the form, and it kind of helped for everything to stay in place. Now, obviously I'm hot gluing this in places, so it is staying, but you'll see a little bit more what I mean by that in a little bit. I am not gluing the edges of this. I am only gluing the top and the bottom, and you don't need to go crazy with the hot glue at this point. I probably actually even used more than necessary. So I am at the middle here, just making sure that I get my point down, and then I went ahead and I pulled it taut and wrapped it around the point at the other end and made sure that that was secured as well with the hot glue. So I went ahead and did that across the whole length, and here I'm coming in with, I don't know what you would call this. To me, it looks like a gold burlap. So it's like rustic glam or something. I don't know, but it's one of my Costco ribbons. I love the ribbon that I get at Costco because you get 50 yards for $6.99. You really can't beat it. So I am just weaving this in and out and in and out And you'll see a couple of pieces of ribbon there, this ribbon that I'm working with now over in the corner. I had tried to do the 2 top bumps and then decided I was going to leave that to the end. So I'll come back in with those little pieces and do that in a little bit. So for right now, I am just weaving the ribbon alternating. So now I'm going under and over. So basically the opposite of what I had just done on that first row. And I'm going to do that all the way from top to bottom now. And I'm making sure that as I do this, that I'm staying on top of the plastic form underneath. I'm not going under those little pieces, especially on the edges, because I need to make sure that I can manipulate the ribbon the way that I want it. I hope that makes sense. And I did learn that as I was doing it, because I did not in each case, and I ended up having to correct it. So I'm not sure if I show that, but I wanted to draw your attention to it. So here I'm at the bottom, and you saw that I popped off the ribbon with the glue so that I could get my gold ribbon underneath there, and then I'll secure it again in a minute. So here I am again, I'm coming back in and securing this a little bit better. I'm securing the gold that's kind of overlapping at that corner and just making sure that that's pressed in, and just using a little pick stem to help me secure that so I don't burn my little fingers. So here I am coming in, you see I'm popping off the hot glue right there. That's why I was saying before, you don't need to go crazy with the hot glue, because there are places where you're going, especially around the curves, where you're going to want to take that off and then re-secure it. And this is where the wired ribbon comes in handy, because it's just helping to keep that ribbon in place until I can flip this back over and secure it with the hot glue. So you can see on the right side there, that's not glued right now. It's just holding by itself barely with the wired ribbon. So once I have it in place and where I want it, I'm going to go ahead, I'm just double checking, make sure things are lined up, glue it, fold that back down, and then I'll go back in with more hot glue around the entire perimeter of the heart. Just make sure that everything is nice and secure. And I went ahead and did that all the way around. So once that was done, I'm taking a piece of scrap fabric, because you know I like having my backs of things finished. So taking some scrap material, I just cut off a piece that was going to fully cover the heart. And I'm going to start by snipping the top, because I want to focus on making sure I can do my top curve edge first. So I folded it under and I'm securing it at the V, and then I will start pulling it taut and gluing it in various places around. Eventually everything will be glued all the way around the heart, and I forgot to fold it under right there, so I'm like gluing it down. I'm like, oh wait, I need to make sure that that's folded under. So I peeled it off. The glue was still hot, so I was able to just fold it under and press it down, and it held. So just make sure that you're folding it under all the way around, and just pull it taut from the places where the glue has already been applied. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, I just did that all the way around the perimeter of the heart, and just made sure that the glue was where I needed it, and pulling the fabric taut, and there's that. So now I'm coming in with a little love piece. I did check to see if I might be able to use the one I pulled off, but it was like cardboard, and it was a very thin cardboard. But I happened to have this piece, excuse me, from Michael's, and it had been, I think, 99 cents, and then I had a 20% off coupon for anything that was regular price, so it ended up being like 80 cents. And I'm using my plaster again and just giving it a dry brush all over, because I wanted it to really pop off of the heart. And I felt like leaving it brown, even though it's really, really pretty as is, I didn't feel like it was going to show enough off of the colors of the ribbon that I was using. So just gave it a nice dry brush. And once that was all done, I went ahead and I secured that to the heart. I'm not sure why I felt the need to show so much of the dry brushing, because you got the idea. But once that was done, I used my hot glue And when you dry brush, I mean, it's really pretty dry, so it doesn't take a lot of effort for it to dry, which is why I didn't even set it aside here. It was fine to go ahead and adhere right onto my project. So there is that. And then I took the hanger that was already on there before that I had removed at the beginning of the project, and I used a little bit of hot glue. I thought about trying to tuck it in there. So you definitely, if you have some forethought, tuck it in as you are gluing that fabric onto the back of your piece, and then you won't even see the little doodad there, right? And then it'll be even more finished. So that's a little tip learned from my mistake. But I just used a ton of hot glue, and that puppy was nice and secure. And there you have it. DIY number 8. For this project, I am starting out with some scrap fabric that I have. I think this is like a piece of linen. I'm not certain. I got it from my mom a while back. And I had measured off about a 14-inch square, and I'm cutting that out. And it was folded in half. So I am just going to make sure that the fabric is turned inside out, and I am going to hot glue my edges. So running a bead of hot glue along 2 of the edges for right now, because I am going to be making a pillow. My sewing machine is still out of commission. So if you have a sewing machine and prefer to sew this, you certainly can feel free to do that. I am just really enjoying the hot glue method lately. So turned it right side out, and I'm going to be using a stencil that I created on my cameo silhouette. Gnome is where the heart is. I just thought that this was super cute. And you know what? Trying to get it on to the fabric and get my transfer tape off, the struggle was real, you guys. It was a little bit of a challenge, but where there is a will, there is a way. So I finally got it off, and then I was just trying to seal my edges as best I could, sliding a piece of parchment paper underneath my fabric to protect the other side. And I've got my ARTEZA fabric paints. They sent me these fabric paints to use. I'm excited to try them. I picked out black and white and a neon peach color, and I'm going to be mixing the paints to get the colors that I want. I'm also cutting up one of my little makeup sponges that you know I love to use when stenciling, and I'm just going to dab this on. So I do have a code for ARTEZA. If that's of interest to you, you get 10% off. The link is in my description box. And a lot of my supplies tend to be down in my description box. So if you have any interest in checking any of those out, please do feel free. I do get a little bit of a commission if you purchase through there, but it doesn't impact the price to you. And in some cases, depending on what it is, I do try to get you guys discounts. So that's always good. So I'm coming in, I had blended a light gray for the hat and for the body of my gnome, a darker gray for the words and just the trim on his hat, and now I'm blending together a pale pink, and I'm going to come in and do his nose and the little hearts all over the design in the pink. Now once this dries, it does say to let it dry for about 6 hours, and then all you have to do is iron the reverse of it, and it will be machine washable and safe for the dryer as well. So I was so excited to pull off the stencil. That's my favorite part always, to see how the design came out, and it did really well, all things considered. So just weeding out the little bits and pieces. So now here I have it. I did turn it inside out again, and I'm sliding in my parchment paper just in case, to want to protect it all, and I'm ironing it for about 5 minutes, it said. So once the 5 minutes was up, I went ahead and took my parchment paper out, and now I'm going to seal up most of this side just to help keep clean edges. It's a lot easier to seal it up this way than it is when it's flipped right side out. So I went about 2/3 of the way down, and then I'm going to flip it right side out again, and then I'll come in with my fiber fill and I will stuff the pillow. You just want to make sure that when you flip it right side out that you poke out all of the little corners. So get your finger right down in there and poke those corners out. So stuffing it with my fiber fill, we can start to see the pillow coming together. So once it's all stuffed, I am just going to seal up that little edge that was left open for stuffing. And if I had to do it over again, I would probably leave that opening at the bottom. I just wasn't thinking when I started gluing it up, but it all worked out. And there you go. Isn't it cute? DIY number 9. So I am using a little palette from the Dollar Tree. I've got these little Dollar Tree wood stickers, if you will, as well. And you can see I found an image on my phone that I thought maybe I would try to trace. And I've heard Holly from Hot Humble Pie talk about tracing images off of her computer screen. Yeah, with a touchscreen phone, it doesn't really work all that well. So I struggled with it a little bit, trying not to touch and move the image, and it just wasn't working. So I ended up having to just do it freehand. So I just kept that image up as an inspiration and then just tried to mimic it on my piece of paper that I was then going to use as a template. It did take me a few tries until I got it the way I wanted it, and so then I just set it aside, and I am now giving a heavy dry brush to my little palette with, again, my Adirondack white chalk paint from Home Decor. And I actually have a link for this in my description box if you are interested in trying to find that on Amazon. So now I've got my ARTEZA graphite paper. Couldn't think of the word there for a second. And I'm using my graphite paper to trace the image onto the little palette. And if you want to just find a printable online, you can certainly do that as well, but you can see it just transferred the image right over. And now I'm going to be using my ARTEZA acrylic paint marker to go over the image or the word, however you want to say it, that I had transferred onto the palette. And I do have a coupon code for you in the description box for ARTEZA if that's something that you have any interest in. I'm really liking their products, so definitely recommend them. So going over it fully with the red, and then I'm going to pull out one of the little hearts. I picked out this little pink one with the sparklies. I thought it was really pretty. And now I did want the color to be a little bit more intense on my sign, so I'm coming back in with a very fine paintbrush with my ARTEZA acrylic paint. This is an acrylic outdoor paint, and they've got some really gorgeous colors, and just very carefully and slowly taking my time and going over all of my letters there. So now this is a ribbon that I had picked up at Hobby Lobby a little while back, and I'd gotten this whole pack for like $3. It was all on clearance. And taking that little ribbon, hot gluing the end to the back of the sign, wrapping it around, hot gluing the end, and then I will do the same thing again at the bottom of the sign. Super cute. DIY number 10. All right, for this project, I'm using a Dollar Tree calendar. This is the February from the Simply Blessed calendar. Also have one of their chargers. and I'm just kind of trying to get an idea of how I want to have it on here, and I decided I was going to cut out the image. So I didn't get super close to the edge of each of these little design elements. I left maybe half a centimeter around it of the gray, and just try to do that as neat as possible. And now I'm coming in with my silver lining chalk paint, and I just wanted to knock down the shine on this charger. It was just a little bit too shiny for me, and this chalk paint was perfect because it was pretty much the same color as the background of my image, so it blended so nicely. So now I'm coming in with some mineral chalk paint as well. And the mineral, if you can see in that image, there's almost like a rusty kind of brownish tinge going through the middle of the Love Never Fails image. And so I was trying to tie some of that in and just distressing my plate. Now, I've been talking about trying to use glue sticks for a while instead of Mod Podge, so I picked some up at Michael's actually the other day. This is photo glue stick, so maybe that's why I was struggling with this. I don't know. I don't know if it was the chalk paint, I don't know if it was the type of glue stick, but this was not sticking at all. It wanted to have nothing to do with sticking. So I finally gave up, brought out my Mod Podge. I decided I was going to try coating the back of it. Of course, this girl did not try wetting it the way that some of my sweet subscribers have suggested. I just kind of went with it. And so I did get a little bit of wrinkling, but it actually was not as bad as usual. I'm thinking maybe having wet the back with the Mod Podge first might have helped my cause. I'm not sure. But I went ahead and smoothed that all down. And then I did come in with another coat of, well, a coat of the Mod Podge over top of it to seal it in. And then, yeah, I just decided I needed to smooth it out some more. So I'm using my little squeegee tool for my vinyl, and I had just placed a piece of parchment paper over top of it, thinking that that would, you know, be able to release easily. It did stick a little bit, and I pulled up a little teeny bit of my image, but it was fine. So a little bit more distressing, right? So I am coming in now with my ribbon that burlapfabric.com has sent to me. This is a beautiful ribbon. It's a gray and like a, I want to say a beige, I guess, color. And it's a burlap ribbon. It's a very thin ribbon. It is not wired, but it's, I'm calling it burlap ribbon because it's frayed along the edges, and then I decided I was going to fray the ends as well. Really, really pretty. And I'm just messing with it, trying to decide how I want to have it lay around my plate. And eventually I did finally decide that I was going to just cut that and get it to lay the way that I want it. Oh, and there is a coupon code for you guys for burlapfabric.com in the description box if you'd like to check that out. It's a $5 off coupon of a purchase of $5 or more. And so this lace ribbon was something that they also sent to me. Really, really think this is beautiful. And I wanted to incorporate that white because it helped the white image pop. So tucked in my corners on there, glued it down with some generous hot glue. And now I'm coming in with another smaller piece of each of these ribbons. I'm going to create a loop because I'm going to make a bow. So creating a loop and then taking a couple of other smaller pieces to tie around that to make my bow. Now, I wasn't worried about having tails here. I didn't want these to show, which is why I cut them so short. If you want extra tails, you certainly can make that longer, but it's really simple. Literally just tying a simple tie around the loop to make your bow, and I kind of fluffed it up. So now I'm using a generous amount of hot glue all across that tie so that it doesn't come undone, and securing it at the top of my plate. Fluffing up my bow, and now because this is not wired ribbon, I am just going to form it the way I want it and use a little bit of hot glue here and there to kind of meld it to my vision. So placing it around the plate the way that I want it, and just making sure that everything is secured in place so it isn't going anywhere. And then I took these cute little flowers that I picked up at Michael's the other day, and I believe they're made of paper, although I couldn't swear to it. It might be some like balsa wood, but I don't know. It's either a really heavy paper or a really light wood, but they are beautiful. And I just wanted to tuck those in there because I thought that they would look really nice with these colors. So I picked out 3 little flowers that I thought were really pretty for this color scheme and just secured them at the top with some hot glue. And there you have it. DIY number 11. So for this project, I am using a Dollar Tree glass vase and some of their cookie trays. I'm actually only going to be using one of these. It comes in a pack of 2. And I do recommend using gloves for this. I am using my tin snips. You probably could use scissors, but I happen to have tin snips, so I figured I would use those just to make sure I save my scissors. And here's where I was like, you know what, I really need to wear my gloves because I think that the aluminum edges probably, or is this tin? I'm not sure. But those edges probably can get sharp. So just be careful with what you're doing. And I do recommend wearing gloves if you have them. So I'm just trimming off the edge of this entire piece. And once I have it all cut out, I am going to grab my piercing tool and show you what I do. Actually, before I grab my piercing tool, I'm going to run it around the vase because I wanted to make sure that I had the proper length. So going ahead and identifying how much extra of this that I have, and then I actually am going to trim that off before I get started with my design. Forgot about that part. So once I have that cut down, I am able to go ahead and grab my piercing tool. Now, I had grabbed some of this batting because I wanted something that I could punch through, but you can see this is way too soft. It's bending my aluminum. So I went ahead and grabbed a piece of scrap foam core instead, and that worked perfectly. And I love that the pattern on these cookie trays, it runs in rows, right? Rows and columns. So it made it really easy to make sure that I was keeping my design straight. Now you could also print off a design on your printer, your computer, and tape that to your project and then use that as a guide as well. So I'm actually thinking I might do another project with this type of method and do the same thing, because the other thing I was wishing I had done that I did not for this, you see at the end of my piercing tool here, that flat edge, I totally could have used that edge to smooth out the hearts and make my design pop a little bit more. So lesson learned, if you do this, I would recommend trying that because I think it'll actually even elevate the project that much more. So here I'm counting off the little squares on the pattern so that I can make sure that my hearts are all lined up and that my design looks symmetrical, because I wanted it to be symmetrical. You can do it however you would like. If you want it to be completely off and different, you can certainly do that too, but just for me, I wanted it symmetrical. Once I had my hearts done, I came in and I punched out home along the bottom. And now, because I'm thinking my design is done, which again, if I had to do over again, I would have done more with it, but I am wrapping it tightly around the glass vase, and then I'm going to grab a straight edge. You can use a ruler. I used a tongue depressor stick because I just had one there. I'm using it as a straight edge to bend over the aluminum, because I want to make sure that that is the way that it needs to be with no sharp edges. And I am going to go ahead and secure that like that, and then fold over my aluminum or tin to the inside of the vase. And then I will do the same thing along the bottom. So as soon as I get that all folded in, I'm going to start folding over the bottom and making sure that that is nice and secured down, and I'm rubbing it until it gets as flat as I can possibly get it. So once I have that all smoothed out and secured down, I'm actually going to grab a piece of the self-adhesive cork that you can get at Dollar Tree. So if I had thought about it before, I would have done this ahead of time. I had an extra glass vase, same exact one. If you only have one, make sure you do this before you apply your aluminum to your container, just so that it's the right shape. Otherwise, you're just going to end up having to cut it down. So applying that to the bottom, and then I am adding in some lights from the Dollar Tree, so you can kind of see my lights are on high here, so it's harder to see the actual image shining through. But I'm looking at it now, and I'm not real happy with being able to see that edge of the aluminum. So I could have probably folded it over once before doing that, but I decided, since I had that rough edge in there, I was going to go ahead and cover it up with some ribbon. So I've just got my length of ribbon. I'm leaving about a ½ inch on the outside and tucking the rest of it in. This, I believe, is a 3-inch, maybe it's a 2.5-inch ribbon. I forget how wide it is, but it was sufficient to be able to give a nice little finished edge on the top of my project, and then also cover up the rough edge on the inside. And then I just secured it with some hot glue. And there you have it. DIY number 12. For this project, I am using some scrap fabric, a heart wreath form from the Dollar Tree, and also a book from the Dollar Tree. And I am just going to take my scrap fabric. This is a long strip. It's about 5 feet long and maybe 5 inches wide. But you can use probably different dimensions. It really is just a means to an end. I'm just covering up, wrapping my wreath form so that I have a surface that I can use. It does not need to look pretty because we are going to be covering this up. So I'm taking my craft knife from the Dollar Tree, and I am just slicing the pages right down along the spine. Be careful of your thumb there. I was being very careful, even though it didn't quite look like it. So I cut out a bunch of the pages, and I started out folding them in the middle, in half a little bit, going both ways, and then I flipped it over and folded it on a diagonal. I was just trying to find a way to get this to kind of fold in on itself in a neat manner, excuse me. And so I continued to do that for a little bit, and then eventually I was like, you know what, I am just gonna start smooshing these. So I just grabbed the middle and smooshed them, and I actually liked the effect that way much better. So up to you if you decide to do the folding method or the smooshing method that I've got going on here, where you literally grab the middle of the page and kind of twist it and just make sure that everything is pointing upwards. Putting some hot glue at the tip and then tucking it in and placing it on the fabric, and you just do that all around the form until it's all filled in. So now I have my sheer ribbon, and I was determined to try to hang this from the center again. And I have tried this before, and for whatever reason with the heart shapes, I just end up not liking the way that it's looking. But I did go ahead and give it a try. I left this part in so you could see what I tried to do. I didn't want to leave it outside of the pages because I was afraid that it would crush them. So I was trying to tuck it in between the pages, and yeah, I was just not caring for that. So ultimately I decided that I was going to go ahead and create just a little hanger on the back. So trying to decide if I wanted a long hanger that'll be seen or if I want it hidden. I ultimately decided I wanted it hidden. So just a little loop of fabric, or not fabric, but ribbon, and hot glued that down, and that was it. DIY number 13. For this project, I'm using a little birdhouse from the Dollar Tree. I loved that this had the little heart cut out for the little birdie Super cute. I'm also excited that I found this sandpaper at the Dollar Tree. It was something like 40 sheets of sandpaper in all different levels of grit. And so I sanded down the rough edges and coming in with my home decor chalk paint, giving everything a really good 2 coats. I did decide I wanted my roof to be a little bit different, so I wanted to go ahead and paint that red, which I did. Just kind of speeding through this painting here. This is a really cute and quick DIY. Touched it up in places, and now I'm coming in with some scrap foam core board, and I'm going to sandwich 3 pieces of this together. Reason being, I'm looking to put my little birdhouse up on a little post, and I need some way to secure the post. So I'm sandwiching with hot glue these 3 little squares, and then I'm going to create a hole in the middle of it in a little bit. First of all, I decided that I wanted to cover the edges, make them look pretty, so I have this red ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and it's got a little bit of a gold shimmer to it. It's actually really pretty. So I'm applying that all the way around the edge. Once I cut it off, tuck that end under just to make sure that it's finished. And then I'll just have this seam face towards the back of my birdhouse, even though it won't really even be noticeable. So this is a dowel, also from the Dollar Tree. I think they come in a pack of 8 or 10, but they're 12-inch dowels. And I just gave that a coat of white paint. I didn't paint it all the way down to the end. You can see it kind of sitting there on the side because I knew I'm going to be cutting that off. I don't want it that full 12-inch length. So I was using my little embossing tool and then a paintbrush stick, just trying to get the hole the size that I wanted it. And then I went ahead and placed my dowel in that hole, hot glued it to the bottom, and now I'm just trying to identify how long I want this. So cutting off about 5 inches, I would estimate. And then I have this cute little flower pot that I had used back in Halloween time for another DIY. So I swiped that, and I'm just filling in with reindeer moss. Is that cute? So now I have my little Dollar Tree bird, and I decided I wanted it to be white like a dove. So I'm going to just go ahead and coat him with a single coat of the white chalk paint as well. And I think he turned out really cute, almost a light gray. DIY number 14. So I am starting out with this sign that my sister had hanging in her kitchen, and she asked if I would make it over for her. It used to be the chore board for her girls, and they decided that they didn't really need it like that anymore. So I'm taking my Adirondack white chalk paint by Home Decor, and I'm going to just give the sign 2 coats of the white chalk paint until everything is nice and covered. And then I created a stencil again on my Cameo silhouette, and I'm just going to cut the stencil down. I did have a 24-inch mat, so I just did it all together to try to save stencil material, and then I cut it down into pieces so that I could arrange it a little bit more the way that I wanted it and get it lined up and spaced out how I wanted it. I did use my little measuring tape measure there, as you can see, to make sure that I was lining everything up properly and keeping everything nice and straight and even. So here I am applying it to the board, and I just did that with all 3 pieces of the stencil to make sure that everything was nicely spaced. Now, for those of you who don't have a Cricut or a silhouette, you can certainly hand letter this or print something out on your computer and transfer it and then fill it in. It does not have to be a stencil, or you can find another stencil that you like, right? It doesn't have to be something you cut out on your Cricut. But I came in with my black chalk paint, and I used my little makeup sponge again, as usual. and stenciled that all in, and now I'm taking off the stencil, and really happy with the results. Had, for the most part, I think I only had a couple little places where I had some bleed, but in this area I was pulling up some of my white chalk paint, and at first I was kind of annoyed about it, but then I was like, you know what, I'm planning on distressing this anyway, so I'm not sure why I came in and did the white paint touch-ups because it really probably wasn't necessary considering I was going to be distressing this, but I don't know, my perfectionism was showing, so I wanted it to be nice and clean before I distressed it, I guess. I don't know. So I got that all weeded out, and I'm going to come in with my sanding block, and I am just sanding away and sanding away and sanding away, and then I would come in intermittently and clear out all of the little dust that was created from the sanding. And then the edges of this sign were really pretty. They had a texture to them which made them really great for distressing, so you can see the little ridges coming through. Here's my little dirt devil sucking up all the extra dust. I figured I'd wipe it all down with a wet wipe, and as I was doing that, it was smudging the paint, and the sanding block had done that a little bit, and I was fine with it again because I was distressing it. And then I was planning on coming in with some gray paint, but when this started kind of smudging with the wet wipe, I just went with it, and that made it easy. DIY number 15. So this project I am totally copying from Sammy at Unicorn Dust Designs. Thank you, Sammy, for the inspiration. It is involving 3 Dollar Tree picture frames that I found that were all the same style. I've got my Gorilla Glue. I had shown you a couple of glass candle holders. This is some scrapbook paper from the Hobby Lobby, and I'm showing you that it's 69 cents, but I got it for $1. They seem to have those on sale all the time. And I'm starting out by removing the little uprights. What do you call those on the back of the picture frame that helps them stand up? But we're not going to need those, so I'm just pulling those off, and I'm going to save them for another project down the road. And I'm going to take everything out, glass included, because I'm going to start by giving the frames a dry brushing of the Adirondack white chalk paint once more. So I'm just going to get everything situated, and you want to be careful. I don't know if you saw that, but I totally broke that little piece of the frame. It's okay because there are other notches, but these frames are not wood. They're like a heavy foam of some sort. So you just want to be really careful and gentle when you're pulling back those tabs, or you'll snap it like I did. So I am just going to go ahead and pull out some of my parchment paper, get everything set, get my stuff out of the way. And I'm going to come in and, like I said, give these a good dry brushing of my Adirondack white chalk paint. So I'm taking my brush, wiping off most of it. This is my chippy brush that I'm using, and I'm going to do this with all 3 frames until they are the way that I would like them to be. So now I'm taking the glass inserts and I am tracing on the back of the paper, and I'm making sure that I'm doing it in the way that I want the slats of the faux wood to go, the design basically. So just want to be aware of that. And now I'm finding center on the back of the paper, and I'm going to trace the piece that I know I'm going to be gluing to the glass part onto the back of here, and I'll explain why I'm doing it on the back in a little bit. Then I'm going to be finding center on my other pieces. Wherever I'm going to be attaching things together, that's where I'm finding center, and I'm marking and tracing just so that when it comes time to assemble it with the glue, I know exactly where I need to place things, because I really wanted to make sure that I had everything lined up. So I'm putting the paper in upside down for right now. We will flip it over later, but right now I just want to get everything assembled. So now you can see where it is that I need to glue everything. That third one, we're not gluing anything to the top, which is why I was able to put the paper in the right way originally. So coming with my Gorilla Glue on 6 of the 8 little sides, and then did some hot glue on those last 2. Sorry about my head, you guys. Kept getting my head in the way of the shot. But so I glued that down on the smallest piece on the underside, and I'm using the wider part to support each tray because Sammy was brilliant when she did that. It just gives each level a little bit more support. So the narrow end is going on the base, and then the fat end is supporting the shelf for the next level. Hopefully that makes sense. So doing the same thing for the next level, using the Gorilla Glue on all but 2 sides, and then coming in with a little bit of hot glue to make sure that that is secure. And I did that for tops and bottoms. So coming in again, Gorilla Glue, and then I'll be adding some hot glue there. And then, of course, now I'm not paying enough attention. Totally crooked, Corie. What are you doing, girl? I tried to fix it. Of course, the hot glue had cooled really quickly, so I'm like, what do I do? Do I let it just dry like that? And I said, yeah, no, I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. So I pulled off the hot glue, and I also wiped off the glue there just so I made sure that I had a clean surface, and then I tried it again. So here we go, straight this time, and I am loving this tiered tray, you guys. Sammy, thank you so much. If you want to see how Sammy did it, I do have a link in my description box for her video. So here it is where I'm flipping the papers right side up. Remember that your little frame isn't supported by anything, and I'm sorry you can't see here, but I'll do it again in a second for that top level and you'll see what I did. So opening it up, I'm going to hold the frame because the glass is connected, but the frame itself that goes around the glass isn't supported by anything, right? It's just floating there. So I held on to that, flipped the paper over, sealing it back up again, and there you have it. I love this. Thanks, Sammy. DIY number 16. So for this one, I have this little love cutout from the Dollar Tree. Are you seeing a theme here? Everything is Dollar Tree today. I love it. I've got my home decor chalk paint once again. We've got a lot of white happening in today's projects. I also thought I was going to be using 2 of these little hearts. It turned out I was only going to use 1, but essentially I gave the whole thing just 1 good coat of the chalk paint, and now I'm trying to see what I'm doing with these hearts. I didn't paint the top of that O thinking it was going to be covered up, and then I'm like, yeah, girl, you need to cover that up. So I went back in and painted it the way that I should have in the first place. So do as I say, not as I do. Go ahead and paint the whole thing first. So then I decided I wanted to distress it a little bit. It was just a little too perfect. So I came in with my Dollar Tree sanding block, and I am just really hitting all of the edges to rough them up. And then I go ahead and I actually accidentally hit the heart. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll rough up the heart too. Of course, I like popped it off of there, but I gave it a good distressing, and then I went ahead and finished up the rest of the piece before putting it back on there, and it stuck right back on again, and all was well. And I love this little piece. I think it's so cute, simple but really pretty. DIY number 17. So this really can't even be called a true DIY, you guys, but I threw it in here as a bonus. I'd gotten these adorable little piggies at the Dollar Tree. I loved them, and I'd asked all of you what I should do with them, whether I should paint them or leave them alone. And some of my sweet subscribers suggested that I should just do the wings. So I'm coming in with some more of my ARTEZA glitter and my Mod Podge. And here I'm just trying to determine how I want to do this. This is before I thought of the custom glitter glue solution. So I'm just coming in and I am painting wherever I want the glitter, and then I am sprinkling the glitter on. Obviously I have my little bin underneath to catch any of the excess glitter. And so I'm just putting the glitter on the piggy hooves, on his little tongue, and then on his wings as well. But you could really do this however you want. I just thought that they were really super cute. So I did this with all 3 of the little piggies and just dolled them up with this pink glitter and my Mod Podge. Like I said, it's hardly a DIY, but I just love them and I wanted to share them with you. So then, again, do as I say, not as I do. I just dumped glitter all over my table thinking I was going to be able to get it into the little tiny container from that big fat container, and yeah, that didn't work. So as you can see, I ended up pouring the rest of it out on my parchment paper, and I used that to get it back into the container. But here they are, and I just love them. I think they're cute. DIY number 18. For this last project, I am using 4 of my ball canning jars, and then I'm also going to be using some stencils that I had picked up at Walmart a while back, as well as some burlap craft sheets. These are also from burlapfabric.com, and they are laminated on the back, so they're great for things that you want to craft with. I was taking my white Adirondack chalk paint and going to give all of my jars just a single coat of paint. It's okay if it's a little bit messy because we're going to be distressing these as well. So 1 coat is perfectly fine, and that's all you need. So now I am taking the burlap craft sheets, and I am trying to decide how large I want them. They don't quite go all the way around the jar, even if I use them lengthwise. So I finally settled on folding them in 3s across the length. Hopefully that makes sense. So 3 shorter sheets for each, and I did this with 3 of the sheets because I needed a total of 8 because I wanted to be able to go all the way around, so I needed 2 for each jar. And I'm also making this reversible. So when I had all of my little sheets cut, I came in with my stencil and again my little makeup sponge with my white chalk paint, and just making sure that that letter is centered and moving on to the next. And so I did this for LOVE and also for HOME. So it is going to be reversible. Now you could certainly use the O and the E jars for both, but I wanted it literally to be reversible because I wanted it that way, just in case I had it on a shelf where you could see both sides of it. So that was why I did it that way. So now I'm coming in with a baby wipe and I'm trying to wet distress my jars, but I let them dry too long, and yeah, the paint just didn't want to come off. Where I got it off, I was using my fingernail through the wet wipe. So I came in with my sanding block instead, and that worked much better. So I'm focusing on the top edges and the bottom edges because our centers are going to be completely covered up with the burlap, so don't need to worry about distressing the centers. So coming in and distressing all of those, and once that was all set, I went ahead and lined them up and I started getting my letters ready. By the time I was done distressing my jars, my letters were dry so I could keep on crafting, and just trying to get an idea of how high up on the jar I wanted them to be. So once I determined the placement, I came in and I just did a bead of hot glue on either side of the burlap strips right to the jar. And I did that for all 4 jars. So here I'm just going to make sure that I have it lined up, that it's even with my L. I'm going to just eyeball it, make sure that everything is the same height, and come in and glue down my strips. So once I had that all done, I flipped them over in the order that I wanted them. So again, they're going to be reversible. So I need to make sure my LOVE is going from right to left now, so that when I place my HOME, when they're all standing up, everything is as it should be. Hopefully that's making sense. So I brought in my new strips for the other side. I folded over the edges and ran a bead of hot glue down the length of that as well. I was just lining this up. I wanted my edges to be nice and clean. It does make them stand out a little bit on the sides, so if you don't want that look, you might want to consider just leaving them flat, but I don't know. It just depends on whether you want a nice clean edge. I wanted the nice clean edge, so just folded that over and came in and secured that on all 4 of the jars as well. So on the one side I have love, and on the other side I have home. So here I'm going to flip them around for you again so you can see they're there, and then I'm just double checking myself. Is home going the right way? Yep, all set. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to add some ribbon. And I'm using more ribbon from burlapfabric.com. They also sent me this thinner ribbon. It's just like the ribbon that we used on the plate, except it's more narrow. So this is, I think it's a 1-inch ribbon, whereas the other one was a 2-inch wide ribbon. And I thought I was going to use the lace for this as well, and then I decided against it. So I just ended up doing a simple knot around the top of the jar, and you'll be able to see in a minute. I'm sorry, at this angle you can't really tell what I'm doing, but then I'm fraying the edges again, and there's how it looks. And then I decided I was going to do that around all of the jars, but I'm going to work my way around each jar with where my knot is. I don't know if that makes sense, but my knot placement is going to be different on each jar, so that no matter whether you're looking at the home side or the love side, you can see the knots and you can see that there's some reason for it. So you can see now, so I've got the one on the left is in the middle, then it moves to the right, then it moves to the back, and now this knot is going to be on the left side of the E for love. And there you go. And here it is with home. Give me a big thumbs up if you like it. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. I'll see you soon. Bye.